This car's going really slow. I see a glacier. See it on the left there too. Way over the left. sure it's mentioned prominently because it's, not very often the road goes right by them.
I will find out.
Close we get. Oh, right up there, Worthington Glacier. To stay here. Oh, we gotta stop. Take a look. Put something warm on, Tiff. Tiff.
I'm trying to eat here.
Well, I'm gonna go take a look. Still can't see her face.
Well, we'd be on the bottom, if we wanted it. Zoomed in farther, Oh, here go my hands. Ooh. Is this good enough, or get the falls? It's getting icky.
Well, it's been like that ever since. Yeah, we're just getting cold wind off the glacier. Imagine at one time this whole valley was filled full of ice. Glacier. Run down there and touch it? I guess it is a little bit further than it looks.
Yes, it is.
Maybe we'll come back here when we leave. It's daytime and there won't be people here. Nothing will be open. What were you just doing, Tiff?
Nothing.
Adjusting your panty liner, you said?
My homemade panty liner.
I never thought we were that high, I guess. some more up.
This is our last.
Well, it's not like we're in the middle of nowhere, too, so.
Wow. See, times are fast. 2670. You're going down. Oh yeah, it's all cloud.
We're not that high up.
Look at that, that's pretty. Yeah.
River down there? Yeah, it's all cloudy right here.
Can't see anything very much right here. It's right in the middle of the road. Can't really see much down there because there's a big.
It's foggy. What? What?
Yeah, no, I'm better doing it at daylight anyways.
Yeah. Pretty cool though.
Nice.
He thinks this is photo worthy. So he thinks this is photo worthy. I guess this is all we're gonna see of Valdez Glacier. You want to twist the wheel to way to the right, Tiff?
Roll down the window.
There's nothing to see. Well, it doesn't end. It's one of those forks is how you get there. Airport.
Airport.
be really beautiful without all the clouds all over.
Have a guest book, and feel free to go down there sometime today and sign it and let us know where you're from and what you thought of the trip. There's a lot of reference books on board as well on that front counter that I mentioned before, as well as up here on the bridge. There's a bunch of reference books that you can take back to your seats and take a look through. And we do sell a few souvenirs on board, some hats and finger puppets, postcards, and we also have extra batteries and film if you run out of any of those items. And also, if you're interested, we have binoculars for rent. They're $5 all day long, and we just need a piece of ID or a credit card as a safety deposit so that you'll remember to drop them off at the end of the day. That's about it. My name is Susan, and your other crew on board today are Colleen, Colin, and Angie, and your captain today is John. Again, welcome aboard.
For the most part, we have a pretty good idea of what goes on in the area, and if we don't, there's quite a few reference books downstairs. I'm sure we can find the answer to your question in one of those. Now, if you're interested in following along, the crew should have handed out some of those little wildlife guides, and in the middle of those, there's an artist's rendition of the area, a little line depicting our route. There's also a few more detailed nautical charts stationed throughout the vessel, 2 downstairs in that main cabin and 1 just up here to the right of where I'm standing. Now, just clearing the breakwater like this, the body of water we're going to enter into is called the Port Valdez. It's about 11 miles long, runs east and west, and is about 800 feet deep right down the middle of it. And eventually, we're going to work off down there towards the right, out to an area called the Valdez Narrows. That's the only real entrance and exit out of the port here. But usually we spend a little time in the morning discussing a few things up here at the head of the bay, but you can see there's a low layer of fog still hanging around over there at the Alyeska pipeline terminal, so we might save discussion of the pipeline terminal until we return this evening, but I might be able to talk about a few other things while we get going here. Now, the first thing to talk about, looking off the left, you can see a large dock over there, a bunch of little boats tied up at it, and once we get out here a little further, should see a yellow-hulled tugboat over there. Now, that's called the service facility. Back in 1989, we had a pretty large oil spill here. The Exxon Valdez ran aground on Bly Reef, ended up spilling 258,000 barrels, 11 million gallons of oil out into the waters of Prince William Sound. Now, at that time, very little oil spill response equipment and no real contingency plan to determine whose responsibility it would be to clean the spill up. That's no longer the case. Now this organization called SERVS, Ships Escort Response Vessel Service, takes care of all that stuff. Every time a loaded oil tanker leaves from the Alyeska pipeline terminal, it's actually escorted all the way out to the open ocean by 2 very large 10,000 horsepower escort tractor tugs. You can see one of those tugboats sitting over there, the yellow one actually called the Alert. Each of those tugboats has all sorts of oil spill response equipment on board. They got about 5,000 feet of containment boom, some dispersants and skimmers, and they're just there to provide a quick and ready response in case there were to be another oil spill someday. Now, SERVS also operates a fleet of oil spill response barges out here in Prince William Sound. There's a few stationed here in the port, a couple more spread out in more strategic locations, and all that stuff just there to be able to combat a spill pretty quickly if one were to occur. Just to the right of that, you can see some grain silos over there in the distance. That project got started up back in the early 1980s. Someone was going to bring a bunch of grain down from around the Delta Junction area and ship it out from Valdez. That project never really got started. Those silos have actually sat there empty ever since they were constructed. But they did give us what was at one time the world's largest floating concrete dock. And still quite a bit of freight for the state comes through here. A lot of the munitions for the Air Force and Army bases up near the Fairbanks area, and some other miscellaneous things as well. Now, one of the things that we do try to emphasize on these trips is the wildlife of the area, and it looks like there's a few sea otters over here floating around just in the middle of the port. It looks like there's about 4 of these guys, and we're going to stop here, take a look at these animals first before we start working down towards the Valdez Narrows. Now, for the most part, the sea otters are pretty tolerant of the vessel, but if you are outside, it is important that you just remain as quiet as you can. Oftentimes, if they are going to get spooked, it's somebody that's trying to talk to them or point at them or wave at them or something like that that will scare them. But we're going to put these ones on the right-hand side if we can. We'll flip the boat around, but with only 4 here, it's probably going to be pretty difficult. And we might see a few more of these guys a little later on.
Sit underneath them. Yep. A little bit of sun. He's gonna get the last person when I get back to school. Oh my god, I don't know.
Sea otters are pretty unusual marine mammals. They're the only ones that live out here that don't have a layer of fat or blubber to protect them from the cold ocean water. All these guys have is their fur, and it's considered by many to be just about the finest fur in the world, anywhere between 150,000 and 650,000 hairs per square inch. Now, they're also pretty large animals. Big males get to be 4 to 5 feet in length, weigh almost 80 or 90 pounds. Females a little smaller, just about 60 or 70 pounds. And most of the animals that we have out here in the Port Valdez like this are males. The females have their young this time of year, and they're usually in more secluded areas with those young ones. And these guys out here are really just kind of socializing. It's a little too deep for them to find food right here, just about 800 feet deep where we're at right now, and they can really only dive down to depths of about 200 feet to find something to eat. And they'll raft up like this in the morning and early afternoon once evening rolls around, work in a little closer to shore, see if they can find some food. For the most part, their diet consists of things like clams and mussels, crab and shrimp. And these little guys actually are pretty voracious eaters.
Well, you just do see.
After that, they decided it really wasn't a safe place for people to live and moved everybody off to the new town site back there behind us. The old town site built on the old glacial outflow plain of the Valdez Glacier. You can't see it anymore. It's tucked back in a little valley there off the left, but at one time it did sit almost directly behind the town. And most of the land, just stuff the glacier brought down with it as it advanced. Most of it just loose rock and sediment, and that stuff pretty prone to shaking. The new town site built on a more solid bedrock foundation, also protected by a couple of large green hills that keep the majority of the residents and commercial areas separated from the water, just in case there were to be another wave. Now, also looking up there off to the left, up in the corner of the bay, you can see some more white tanks, large smokestack. That's a small refinery called the Petrostar Refinery. It's actually tapped directly into the Alyeska pipeline. And there they refine a small amount of marine-grade diesel, jet fuel, things like that. Most of it ends up getting used in other communities throughout Alaska. Now, like I said, the port here just about 800 feet deep right down the middle of it. It's also Alaska's northernmost ice-free port. None of the middle of this bay freezes over in the wintertime. And that's really why we have this large facility coming into view off the left, located in Valdez. Now, back in 1968, they discovered large amounts of oil up on the north slope of Alaska, and really thought of quite a few different ways to try to bring that oil to market, eventually deciding that building a pipeline down to Alaska's southern coast and shipping it out via tanker from there would be the most efficient method. And well, they chose Valdez simply because it was so deep, they didn't have to do any dredging to bring those larger ships in, and also because they didn't really have to worry about ice in the wintertime. Now, all told, the pipeline is about 800 miles long between Prudhoe Bay and the terminal here, on its way down across its 3 major mountain ranges over 800 rivers and streams. When they started construction on it back in 1973, it took 25,000 workers almost 3.5 years to complete everything up there at Prudhoe Bay, all 800 miles of pipeline. The 11 pump stations between here and there in this 1,000-acre facility you can start to see coming into view off the left.
You could put that.
Now, when they weren't finished, it did come in as the largest privately funded engineering project in history. Cost just about $9 billion overall.
You have to take this off.
Now, if you'd driven down from the Glen Allen or Fairbanks area, you would have seen that the pipeline is above the ground for most of its length. And that's really how it is just about everywhere. They were worried that all the permafrost up north, all the freezing and thawing it did would crack or damage the pipeline had they chose to bury it. And they decided it would be a little safer just to leave it above the ground. But once you get about 40 or 50 miles north of Valdez, it is buried from that point on down here to the terminal. Not quite cold enough to have permafrost in the area. Also, they were worried that avalanches up on Thompson Pass might crack or damage the pipe. Now, when the oil comes in, they got a couple options of what they can do with it. If there's a tanker sitting there at one of the loading berths like there is today, they can just pump it directly onto that ship. If there's not, they actually have to divert it into those 18 large storage tanks you can see up there on the hillside. Now, there's 4 tanks up there in the west tank farm, 14 tanks in the east tank farm, and each of those tanks is about a 510,000 barrel of oil capacity for a total barrelage of about 9.1 million barrels. A barrel of oil is nothing more than a unit of measurement, just equal to about 42 U.S. gallons.